Shelley did a great job in teeing us up this morning around this whole world of data and analytics. And I think it's actually even broader than data as a currency, but data and analytics are really a part of becoming a part of the core DNA in terms of how companies operate or need to operate or need to compete. And so at a time when you pick up the paper, you can't help but reading about data and analytics, and the fact that, in this room in the next 10 seconds, we're going to create more data than we've created in the last, 200 years and that type of thing. Our session this morning is going to focus on how a CIO and a marketing person look at the way that data is changing their business, give us a peek into the future, and give us a sense, quite frankly, for some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that all of us deal with every day, but from a very, very precise perspective. So with that, our guest this morning is John Honeycutt. John is CIO at Discovery Networks. He has a impressive bio, which I won't take the time to read. He spent a lot of time in international. We were just talking earlier. He cut his teeth at Fox Sports, and now is really focused on everything technology at Discover. Deepa it brings us a marketing lens. And when Deepa and I were talking, I said, geez, tell me what your company does. He says, you should think about my company as the Amazon of Japan. And what we're trying to do in the US is bring some of those things to the US. So she brings a marketing perspective to this topic of data and analytics, and how to monetize it and how to use it as a currency, both for your company and for your clients. Now, we have a bit of a bias when it comes to the use of data and analytics. You can use data and analytics for a number of things, but I think our bias is how do you actually make a difference in impacting the customer experience and the way you bring customers in the door and the way you keep them. So with that, let me start with the first question, and Deepa, I'll give it to you. Can you give us a sense for how your business, how your firm is using data and analytics as a way of, in fact, driving that customer experience or driving the objectives of your business?
For sure. Thanks, Alton. And thanks, Shelley and Landmark, for having me at this panel. You briefly talked about what my company does. We are a global marketplace, very, very big in Japan. And in the US, our presence is beyond just marketplace. So one of the things that the organization I work for does is we provide a full-on funnel view to the entire customer journey across marketing channels, across devices, online to offline, for the advertisers who work with us. And this really helps them make smart media decisions. And honestly, those data points that customers are leaving are extremely valuable. They want us to be smarter in their conversations we are having with them and engage them at a more personal level. And those are some of the ways we are trying to help our customers achieve this.
John, how about your perspective at Discovery?
Well, I think, first of all, thanks to Shelley and the team for having me here. It's interesting. Shelley, I think hit an interesting point that, for years in the television business or in the media business, we've had a measurement currency in Nielsen. I think the fundamental difference that's happened over the last several years is that the change in how we use data is moving from in arrears into a predictive model. And that's the goal of every media company these days, not only through simple things like recommendation engines, et cetera, but really digging into where people are finding interesting components of content and then beginning to expand that. I think the holy grail that we're all looking for is to predict a show or a sub-genre of a show that will become a big hit. And it's really that fundamental difference of looking backwards to looking forwards is what a lot of us in the television or media industry are focused on today.
One of the interesting things in terms of this explosion of data and analytics is how do you balance that with the art of marketing and the art of media? Because we can become data scientists, but at the end of the day, there's still an art piece of this. How is that working at Discovery?
Well, it is an art, and it is about the good idea and that good thing that resonates in human hearts. about a person, a story, a love, a hate, on and on. You still need to have that. But the thing that we really see is the ability to shape that. The ability to shape that good idea, that interesting thought, and go a little bit deeper. I mean, at Discovery today, and really across our portfolio, we're doing a lot of content, focused in Alaska, in gold. And you could look at that as an interesting subject that's been, portrayed for years in the media business. But the real root of us moving into that was back in sort of 2008, 2009, when the economy started to struggle worldwide. And there was this concept of people wanting to take control of their own lives and wanting to go and be self-sufficient. So they bet their house, they bet their mortgage, they bet their family, they moved to Alaska, and with their hands they began to dig. That's the root of where that comes from. And I think that if you look back, there was a trend in the country of people wanting to not rely on this worldwide complex economy, and they just wanted to get back to their heart and their soul. And that's now turned into a massive opportunity to portray these stories really on a worldwide basis. For us, Gold Rush, one of our hit shows, actually, it's the #1 show on Discovery worldwide. That's not, it's 220 countries. That's not only the United States phenomenon. That root of people's emotion really plays through, and data can help us bring that story to life.
So in a sense, the genesis of that was kind of the art, right? And somebody having a great idea, and the opportunity being magnified in a sense by the data, and perhaps helping the positioning and so on.
Absolutely.
Okay, Deepa, what are your thoughts?
So I'm actually going to take the other stand, which I absolutely agree with John, but I also think that data can be and is a starting point for many of these conversations. I have an interesting story. A few months ago, I went to Chase and to ATM, and right as I was wrapping up my transaction, I see balloons on the screen, and it said, "Happy birthday." And so as a marketing person, all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, that's pretty nice. So my birthday is a data point they have. But a human being said, let's do something with it to engage with this customer. And they created that relationship with me. And I truly think that data is a starting point, but then you layer it with this art and the emotion, and then measure it again. Or I guess I just like being wished happy birthday by ATM machines.
Yeah. Well, that is a fascinating story. In fact, I'll tell one of my own. About 8 years ago, we had a tornado in Atlanta. And I happened to live in the area that was impacted by it. It was on a Friday night at 10 o'clock or something. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I got a call. It's from American Express. They said, "Mr. Adams, we noticed that you're in the area that was impacted by the tornado last night. Wanted to see if there's anything American Express could do for you. I wanted to make sure if you were okay." And it's fine. And said, by the way, ignore the email, because we weren't quite sure we would be able to get through to you on your phone in person. And what I found fascinating with that, right, was it was driven by data, right? But I also found that there are a number of other companies, insurance companies, my mortgage lien holder, who had the same data, but American Express had the art, the thinking about how do we change the experience using that data driven by our mission, which is this whole customer experience. So I think there is a bit of an art and science. If you combine them, you really do have the opportunity to change the relationship with your customers. But with that said, right, with those being the opportunities, I think it's fair to say that there are a number of challenges that we all deal with. We've got the structured data, unstructured data phenomenon. How do you link those two together? How do you figure out what data is relevant and what's not? Once you have the data, what kinds of analytics do you apply to that, and how do you get the number of R programmers that you need, and so on? And then, once you have the insight, how do you get that to decision makers or to people who are touching the customers in a way to actually change that? So there's a whole continuum of stuff. What's your sense in terms of where your challenges are, either on that continuum or in other places, right, and what should companies be thinking about as they try to manage those?
Yeah. Well,
All of it? Okay. Look, I think the two biggest sort of issues that we focus on are one, access, and two, volume, right? Getting access to the right data, the quality of data. I mean, data, in the MVPD world, MSO world, there's a lot of restriction on us getting access as programmers to quality set-top box data, which is really, where the vast majority of consumption is still taking place. And it's where we make the vast majority of our money. So getting access to that information is critical. The question then becomes, how do you parse it, right? How do you start to look at what demos, what trends are there within it? And what we're seeing every day, there's probably not a week that goes by that I don't get an email or a phone call from a company, all of them quite interesting, claiming to have the new currency, which I think Shelley raised earlier. How do we then separate sort of the hype from the truth is becoming an increasingly challenging thing for us. My architecture team, I had a meeting with them yesterday actually, we spent 2 hours going through a list of all of the new sort of startup or new developments in companies who are aggregating and looking to sell us data. And we're creating scorecards of these companies. What do we believe? Do we really believe they're at scale? They tell us they can get access to 10 or 15 million data points. How many can they actually use? Access and use are two totally different things. So it's a very complicated component, but in the end, it's access and volume.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that, but like you said, the list for the challenges we have can go on. And from my perspective, the one that I see which is really big, is organization structures in our world. The fact is that even today, a lot of organizations, the digital is separated from the stores. Even within digital, channels, don't always talk to each other. And therefore, for, I would say, not lack of willingness, but just the amount of work and that is needed to sort of bring all these pieces together, CMOs end up choosing metrics which are not relevant anymore. I mean, we all know that only 3% is the average conversion from a digital click. Does that mean 97% of the people don't shop? Well, they really do, but the fact is that everyone is trying to optimize their campaigns to these clicks without really understanding this engagement or the matrix that is really helping drive that customer beat in store, through the device, or online.
So what's the answer? What should a company be doing?
So the way I look at it is that fundamentally the organization structures need to change. They really need to understand it is about the customer and the customer's journey. They don't care whether if they're shopping online or the store. For them, they're going to Macy's. And I have to say, Macy's of all people is ahead of the curve on many of these things. They are a customer first, and we see them. They recognize the broader vision and are slowly making this move to bring these pieces of organization together. The CTO and the CMOs, they work in collaboration versus sort of having different agendas. So yes, I do think that the organization structures need to become more collaborative and understand that it's a different world. And they can use this data to empower their business, or they will drown in the data that is being collected, not knowing how to use it. So that's the answer.
Well, and this whole concept of the convergence of the CIO and CMO agendas is actually a big thing, right? And I think you can argue that in this day of big data and analytics and software as a service and those things, it's probably more important than ever to have those organizations be in sync. John, your business creates a lot of their own data, and particularly given the number of properties. Are you, in fact, thinking about how that data can be monetized in terms of how you work with your clients? Are you looking at? Are you doing that in any way right now?
Absolutely. I mean, probably the number one concept or future concept in the advertising world is programmatic buying. So, as a company, we clearly understand the desire of ad agencies to increase accuracy, and we want to increase accuracy in who we reach because it's simply more efficient from a yield perspective. The question is how do we collaboratively come up with the right measurements in the right ways to show who we're reaching and how we're reaching them and on what screen we're reaching them. So that's probably, when I talk about volume of money, that's probably the hot spot, right, is understanding that trending and what's happening. We're working on a project internally now where we are replacing our internal advertising sales system for our US business. And this concept of how we make sure look, any project you do, you try to future-proof as many ways as you can, and ultimately you don't. But this concept of making sure that we have the hooks into and understanding how a programmatic world will evolve in the future is hugely important. And look, we don't believe it's all going to go programmatic. That's a naive statement. What we believe is that there will be pockets of day parts, pockets of networks, pockets of time that can become hyper-specialized for certain selling types. And that's a really interesting concept for us, and we need to be prepared for that future.
Okay. Deepa, any thoughts?
So we recognize that to us measurement is a very critical aspect of our business, and we made an acquisition in the space a few months ago where we acquired this company in the attribution and measurement space, and that has now enabled us with 10 plus years of technical experience as well as talent pool that can really empower us to optimize our existing media channels. So we are in the search, display, retargeting, affiliate, search, social marketing businesses. So that attribution piece is helping us empower our existing media channels so that we can now help our customers make smarter decisions around and optimize those campaigns. And in addition to that, it is also giving us the opportunity to reach a whole set of new advertisers who are trying to solve this data challenge and want to work with us on the attribution side of the house.
Okay, great. So it's 2019, 5 years from now, and we're back here at Shelley's event, and we're sitting up here on the stage, and we're having a conversation about how data and analytics and currency has changed our world, right? And how we're doing things differently, better, faster, whatever. Give us a sense, and John, I'll start with you, about what that looks like and feels like in your business.
Well, if I knew it, I'd be on a beach with an amazing stock portfolio, and I'd just be waiting for the moment. But I don't know. But what I do know is that the shift has happened. Random access, people's desire to watch it when they want it, is no longer a future concept. It has happened. And we will be in a place as a company where we are prepared to serve that content when and where and how consumers want it. The big question between now and then is how we access the right information to monetize it properly. That's the fundamental question I think we're all facing. Consumers want it, we all want it, everybody wants it. How do we get that access, and how do we do the monetization strategies most efficiently and effectively?
Okay, great, thank you. And Deepa?
Well, in my world, I would say, or I would hope, DMPs will become a commodity. We would we'd really solve for this structuring issue around data that we talked about. And I think the second one is millennials are leaving a ton of data pieces. They are not worried about the personal information they're leaving behind. And I would hope that we as marketeers can really start focusing on our customers versus our channels and how our organizations work. So that's the change I would hope for. I don't know if it'll be there.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, look, Deepa, John, thank you. You know, when it comes to this data analytics and big data, small data, it reminds me of Winston Churchill's quote where he said that this is not the beginning of the end, it's the end of the beginning, right? And the journey's just started, and it's going to continue to be dynamic, and things will continue to change. So appreciate you, both of you, sharing your current perspectives as well as what you think is going to happen in the future with us this morning. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.